Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about the statement, "Where attention goes, energy flows." It's a statement that you often hear in relation to spiritual awakening, and intuitively we can understand some of what it means. We are, in a very physical, tangible sense, feeding what we pay attention to with our energy. If you, for example, pay attention to your social media feed, this will provide revenue for advertisers and creators, and you will choose not to engage with other things that would grow more if you dedicated more attention to them. However, in David Hawkins's body of work, attention is not merely a function of the mind, but a force that shapes and sustains experience, reinforcing the reality of whatever it is directed toward, giving it significance and power within the field of consciousness. His understanding of consciousness reveals that what one places attention on is fed with the energy of awareness, not just in a metaphorical sense, or because of the activity that is associated with the attention, but in a very literal sense. When you focus on a thought, emotion, or situation, you are not just observing it, you are actively giving it energy from your consciousness. This energy isn't symbolic or imagined. According to Hawkins, it's a real force that sustains and intensifies whatever you focus on. In his system, consciousness is like a field, and attention acts as a spotlight within it. Wherever the spotlight shines, that part of experience becomes more alive, more dominant. This is why focusing on fear makes it stronger, while focusing on peace or love makes those states more present in your life. Attention is therefore one of our most valuable resources, and it's a resource that is more and more being stolen from us in our modern world. This happens in plain sight, but most people don't pay attention to the fact that this is happening, no pun intended. It is therefore useful to consider just how much of our everyday activities are governed by what we pay attention to, and how often we allow our attention to simply wander aimlessly and let it be swallowed up by anything that happens to come into our field of perception. This is no cause for alarm, though. Whether your attention is stolen intentionally by malevolent actors or simply by unconscious actors that want to use your attention for financial gain, all you need to do is become aware of this, calmly start noticing when your attention is being stolen, and decide to work consciously on becoming more intentional about your attention. When you start paying more conscious attention, you will notice how your reality starts to change, as you can now begin to understand that attention is an indispensable key to shifting our experience. As we have seen, attention energizes what it is directed toward, and the physical actions that are associated with it are only the visible manifestation of this. Remember that thoughts, emotions, or events persist and grow stronger when they receive consistent attention. If, on the other hand, attention is withdrawn completely from mental or emotional content, the content begins to lose its grip. Hawkins guides readers to surrender their attachments by shifting attention away from resistance and toward the presence of awareness itself. This shift of focus, from being caught up in the external reality and instead being grounded in a place of awareness, is key in the inner shift that a spiritual awakening entails. From this place of awareness and inner stillness, we can calmly choose where we place our attention, instead of allowing the external environment, and whatever it happens to, trigger in us to dictate it for us. According to Hawkins, the ego exists primarily through the mechanism of attention. The identity formed by the mind is sustained by repeatedly focusing on mental narratives, emotional reactions, and bodily sensations. By withdrawing attention from these patterns, one does not become passive, but instead begins to experience the deeper stillness that lies underneath the activity of the mind. In this way, attention becomes a spiritual tool. Where one directs attention determines the field of inner experience, the quality of consciousness, and ultimately the perceived reality. This understanding aligns closely with the Hermetic principle of mentalism, which states that all is mind and that the universe itself is a mental construct. In this view, reality is not something fixed and external, but arises from consciousness itself. This also aligns with certain schools of quantum physics. Just as the Hermetic teaching implies that reality flows from the mind, Hawkins shows that attention is the mechanism by which the mind generates experience. The ego, in this context, is not an inherent entity, but a pattern continuously recreated by where attention is placed. When attention is withdrawn, the mental construct loses its energy, revealing the silent, undisturbed presence beneath. Both frameworks point to the same conclusion. Consciousness is primary, and attention is its creative function. By consciously redirecting attention, one doesn't just change the content of the mind, but participates in reshaping the very fabric of experienced reality. Hawkins has researched the different levels of consciousness which one can experience reality from in detail, from the lowest level of shame to the highest level of enlightenment. Each level of consciousness is accompanied by a unique worldview, emotional tone, and dominant mental patterns. Attention plays a central role in navigating these levels. For example, at the lower levels of shame, guilt, and fear, attention gravitates toward threats, judgments, and imagined dangers. The emotional energy in these states reinforces a perception of life as hostile or hopeless. As one moves upward to levels like acceptance, love, or peace, attention shifts to qualities such as compassion, understanding, and unity. This change in focus allows for a different experience of the same world. This is something that is important to understand clearly. Our emotional states determine both what we feed our energy into through our thinking and what we notice of all that which passes through our field of experience. If we are in a low emotional state, we are much more likely to notice and remember, for example, bad news, while good news or opportunities pass us by. And if we, on the other hand, are in a positive emotional state, we more easily see all the good things in the world and the potentiality for positive outcomes in everything. And it doesn't stop with our experiences. We will think very differently about information we receive, whether it's positive or negative, depending on what state we are in when we receive it. And the more we feed a particular event with our thoughts, the more we anchor it in our memory. By becoming aware of this dynamic, you begin to take control over it. And remember, this is just the visible manifestation of processes that are happening beneath the surface. Everything, in essence, is energy and vibration, and the physical reality is just where our focus is channeled at the moment, as we are having this human experience. And, as we have seen, consciousness precedes physical manifestation, and our focus does not just govern what we perceive, but also helps creating it. Hawkins also introduces the concept of attractor fields, energetic patterns that organize thoughts, emotions, and behaviors at various levels of consciousness. Attention locks one into these attractor fields. When attention is fixed on fear-based information, one becomes entrained in the energetic field of fear. The same is true for fields of anger, pride, or desire. Letting go of these fields requires a conscious decision to stop feeding them with energy through attention. Instead, turning awareness toward inner silence, gratitude, or loving kindness allows access to higher energetic fields, which naturally dissolve the grip of lower patterns. Apart from the different levels of consciousness, Hawkins also makes a distinction between two radically different mindsets: power and force. As many know, he has written a whole book on the topic. Force requires effort and always meets resistance. Power, on the other hand, is effortless and arises from alignment with higher states of consciousness. Attention directed from a state of force tends to reinforce the ego's struggle with life. But attention that flows from power aligns with truth and has a harmonizing effect. This principle underlies the practice of non-resistance. When one stops reacting and simply witnesses, the need to control or manipulate begins to dissolve. Attention becomes free rather than compulsively drawn to conflict, judgment, or fear. Feelings and thoughts lose their charge when they are allowed to arise without being resisted or indulged. When we can take a step back from whatever is going on, remain present, and allow whatever is present to be there without doing anything in particular with it, we free ourselves from the grip of that which is trying to grab hold of our attention. As Hawkins states, the mechanism of surrender involves observing the inner experience without judgment and allowing it to run its course. In doing so, attention is reclaimed from the repetitive loops of the mind and becomes available for higher perception. It's important to realize just how much of our inner experiences and dealings with the outer world have been running on autopilot simply because it has never occurred to us that we have a choice. Most people go through most of their lives reacting to external stimuli and whatever emotions the stimuli give rise to, both with actions and automatic thoughts. Just by clearly realizing this, you have taken an enormous step toward reclaiming your attention. Letting go does not mean becoming indifferent to life. Hawkins is clear that spiritual progress involves increasing sensitivity and compassion. But sensitivity does not mean entanglement. Through mastery of attention, one can remain aware of pain or injustice without becoming consumed by it. Instead of feeding negative energy into a situation through reactive attention, one can serve as a stabilizing presence. This ability becomes especially relevant in relationships, work, and social settings, where attention often gets hijacked by emotional triggers or unconscious patterns. As soon as we become reactive to anything besides an immediate danger, we lose our ability to handle the situation effectively. An important question that we can ask ourselves is whether placing our attention on something actually helps to resolve or alleviate the situation in some way. What we often find is that we are investing emotional energy into something that we can do nothing about, and we may even disrupt the natural course of things playing themselves out. We may feel some sort of obligation towards investing emotional energy in this or that because we feel like uncaring people if we don't. But when we look at things more closely, we see that our energy is wasted, and that we may actually be in a better position to help by investing the energy elsewhere. It's important that you begin noticing these patterns in your own life. We usually don't see how dysfunctional many of the things we habitually do are until we start examining them. This is because we are usually not as aware of what is going on in our immediate experiences as we think. Neither are we aware of how we interact with those experiences or make efforts to draw accurate conclusions from the experiences. Awareness is the key here. Again, you are reminded that this is first and foremost about your inner state. This is where it all starts, but naturally, since we are having a human experience right now, this manifests in our dealings with the five-sense reality. Hawkins points out that the body obeys the mind, and the mind is guided by attention. This connection illustrates why stress, illness, and fatigue often arise when attention is habitually fixed on problems or threats. Conversely, healing begins when attention shifts to gratitude, peace, and acceptance. By reorienting attention, the nervous system relaxes, and the body's natural capacity for regeneration is activated. This principle is not based on wishful thinking, but on repeated clinical observation. Hawkins also discusses the role of intention, which he links closely with attention. Intention without focused attention lacks energy. Attention without clear intention is scattered. When intention and attention are aligned, transformation becomes possible. This is seen in practices like prayer, contemplation, or acts of service, where attention is not only focused, but directed toward meaningful and life-affirming aims. Through this alignment, even simple actions take on a different quality, and the presence of awareness becomes more accessible. Throughout his writings, Hawkins encourages the reader to experiment with attention. He does not ask for blind belief, but suggests trying it out. What happens when you stop focusing on what you dislike? What happens when you rest attention in silence or gratitude? These experiments are not about gaining something, but about revealing what has always been present beneath the surface of mental noise. Attention, in this sense, is a doorway to reality as it is, beyond interpretation. When attention is no longer consumed by internal commentary, a spaciousness emerges. This spaciousness is not empty. It is alive with awareness. Hawkins refers to this as the contextual field, in contrast to the content of consciousness. By placing attention on context rather than content, one begins to identify not with passing thoughts or feelings, but with the unchanging presence in which they arise. This subtle shift in attention changes everything. It moves the sense of self from the personal to the universal, from form to formlessness. This process is not instantaneous, nor is it without resistance. Hawkins acknowledges that the ego resists surrender because it fears its own dissolution. But the more consistently attention is placed on awareness itself rather than its contents, the weaker the ego's grip becomes. Attention becomes an instrument of liberation rather than identification. It is through this redirection of attention that one begins to experience the silent joy of being, untouched by circumstance. In summary, Hawkins's teachings invite a reconsideration of the role of attention in life. It is not just a mental function, but a creative force that shapes reality. Wherever attention is directed, energy flows. This means that attention energizes what it is directed toward, be it fear, peace, conflict, or healing. That energy shapes perception, emotion, physiology, and even the experience of time. Awareness of this process allows us to reclaim control over our inner and outer experiences. In this way, the simple act of noticing where your attention goes becomes one of the most powerful spiritual practices available to you. Remember that you have much more power over yourself and your inner life than it may first appear. It's just that you didn't know how many things you unconsciously allowed to run on autopilot. Again, you are invited to notice how this plays out in your own life. See how what you experience throughout your day grabs hold of your attention. See how you get triggered into automatic cycles of thoughts and emotions that feed each other. Just by becoming aware of this, your experience will begin to shift. The act of consciously choosing where you place your attention in itself does not require any effort, and it brings you back to the present moment as opposed to being pulled between one thing and another, and between past and future. By taking back control over your attention, you begin taking back control over your life. As you can understand from this, it is crucial to learn to observe yourself so that you can see how this plays out in your personal experience. We have a video about self-observation as taught in the Fourth Way system that will help you to do just that. We also have whole videos that go into detail about Hawkins's work on energies and vibrations, and one that delves deeper into the concepts of power and force. There are links to them on the end screen that you can see right now. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.